Hi, and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm NASA Press Secretary Jackie McGinnis, and I'm joined here today by NASA leadership. We'll be taking media questions from folks here in the room and over the phone about NASA and Boeing's second orbital flight test, scheduled for liftoff tomorrow at 2:53 p.m. Today, we'll hear from NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy, Associate Administrator Bob Cabana, and Director of NASA's Kennedy Space Center, Janet Petro. First, I'd like to welcome Janet Petro to kick us off.
Thank you, Jackie. Good morning and welcome to the Kennedy Space Center. You know, it's a very exciting day for us here at America's premier multi-user spaceport for the Boeing's OFT launch 2 tomorrow. And you know, we're really busy at Kennedy. This is one of many launches that we're going to be supporting this year, including Artemis 1 and many commercial crew, cargo, and crew flights later this year. And I can't really forget our support to the science. We have Landsat coming up, and we're going to be supporting that from Vandenberg. And we have a number of launches from both the East Coast and the West Coast. Now, it's my honor to introduce you to our first speaker, and he is no stranger to space. He served the public for the past 4 decades, starting with the state legislator, and then he was a congressman, and then he served 3 terms as a senator in public service before being named our administrator. So please help me in welcoming Administrator Senator Bill Nelson.
Hey, good morning. I want you to know that it's good to be home. This is the county that I grew up in, and it's indeed just a great privilege for me to be asked by Joe Biden to head up NASA. There are so many exciting things that are happening. And it's all in the remainder of this year. We are not only doing this test flight, which of course will then be followed by the crewed flight. There'll be another crewed flight of SpaceX. We're going to launch the James Webb telescope. It is going to be positioned 1 million miles from Earth, and it's going to look through a little keyhole back into the far reaches of space, if you can believe it, to light capturing that is 13.35 billion years old. I mean, that's enough to blow your mind right there. And we're going to be launching the largest, most powerful rocket ever at the end of this year. Yesterday, we got a chance to go over to the Vehicle Assembly Building and see it. And, you know, the 3 of us are accustomed to walking up to the shuttle and seeing that with the 2 solids on either side. This center core is so much bigger than the external tank. And it is going to pack on this launch 8.8 million pounds of thrust. You better get your earplugs, even though you're going to be 3 miles away. This is the excitement that we have going on in NASA. Now, I'm just privileged to have a very professional team with us. And the first one I want you to meet is Pam Melroy, retired colonel in the Air Force, the second woman test pilot in the Air Force, the second woman pilot, commander astronaut in NASA. And fortunately, she is now my partner in this adventure as we venture out into the stars. Pam?
Thank you, sir. It is a great privilege to be your partner in this effort. And to me, it's a wonderful thing to come home to NASA. And I'm just loving being back in Florida, too. It's so incredibly inspiring. I do want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. We're here, of course, for the Boeing OFT-2 launch, but I just want to talk about the International Space Station, its destination, for a moment. I was very privileged over the course of the 3 flights that I had to help assemble the space station. And to me, the huge reward has been the science that we have been able to accomplish in microgravity because of the International Space Station. I'm particularly excited that as we have the Commercial Crew Program is going to provide a boost to the crew time and the cargo, that we will be able to accomplish more science on the International Space Station. So that's one of the deeper meanings of why we're here to watch this launch and what it will accomplish for the ISS. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Bob Cabana, Associate Administrator.
Thanks, Pam. First off, I want you to know it is great to be home in Florida supporting another launch. Absolutely an exciting time. And I'd also like to congratulate our Russian partners on a successful docking of their MLM module earlier this morning, paving the way for the launch of OFT-2 and the Boeing Starliner on that ULA Atlas V tomorrow afternoon. This OFT test flight, this is really crucial. As you know, a year and a half ago in December of 2019, we met a lot of objectives, but we did not meet the objective of rendezvous and docking with the International Space Station, verifying all the software and the systems needed to safely do that. So that's going to be of critical importance on this mission coming up, that we demonstrate we can do rendezvous proxops, that all the sensors work, that all the software works, the guidance, navigation, that everything works as it should. We'll get more data on the vehicle as it's docked to ISS and flying to and from the International Space Station. And we're going to bring some cargo home, too, which is critical for future missions to ISS. So an absolutely exciting time. Looking forward to tomorrow afternoon. Jackie?
Thanks, Bob. So now we'll open it up for questions. We have folks joining us in the room and on the phone, but wherever you're joining us from, please state your name and outlet before you ask your question. Go ahead.
Hi, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Well, thank you for all being here, and congratulations on all of your confirmations and assignments. Bill, I'd like to ask you, since you saw Artemis the other day, and you guys helped to get it ready, can you give us an update on, since you've been administrator a couple of weeks, on Artemis 3? How close, what's the timeline? Can you achieve 2024? Will it slip? Or is it possible you might have to put some other mission in the schedule? Thanks.
Well, remember that under the present schedule, we're going to go to the moon with humans in 2023. We're going to circle the moon, and we are going to bring them back safely prior to Artemis 3, which is going to transfer into a lander. Now, we've lost some time because there is this a dispute that is going to be reconciled by the General Accounting Office, and that should be coming next week. And under the law, the policies and procedures of the GAO protests, we are mute until that decision is made. But as to your larger question, space is hard. There are always things that happen, especially when you're developing new technology and you're going further and further. But this whole thing is important because what we are going to do in and around and on the moon is in preparation to go to Mars. It's a 3-day trip to the moon, but it's many months to go to Mars. And once you get there, because of the alignment of the planets, you're likely going to have to stay on the surface for a while. So we've got to develop all of these new systems and these new this new equipment and the new procedures to sustain human life for all that length of time so far away. But that can be done at the moon. So we're going when it's safe. And that's my answer to your question.
Yep, in the back.
Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight. I'm curious, we have 3 astronauts on this panel now in positions of authority in NASA in this new era where Starliner and Orion will be joining Dragon. We've got all these new crew vehicles coming on board. So I'm curious, aside from keeping crew safe, which is the ultimate thing with these vehicles, what are your experiences as astronauts that you want to instill and carry forward with these new programs aside from just crew safety?
Go ahead.
Well, I think the one thing that we all would say was very important part of an experience of being an astronaut is to work together as a team. So, and taking care of your people. So for all of us, that is an extremely high priority. And I think that the good news is NASA is, for the 9th year in a row, the best place to work in federal government. So that mentality of teamwork and taking care of your people is very much imbued across the agency and all the missions. I think I'd just like to speak for myself and maybe a little bit for Bob. Both of us were military test pilots. So the Aeronautics Directorate mission really speaks to us. I actually studied planetary science, so the Science Mission Directorate is very near and dear to my heart as well. And from my time at DARPA, I worked closely with the Space Technology Mission Directorate. One of the things that we really enjoy is a leadership team that understands that everyone has to support the goals of the agency. And so to see our senior leadership working together is a tremendous pleasure, and it's our job to actually enable that.
Thank you. Next up, we have Paul Brinkman with UPI.
Hi, yes, thanks for doing this. Regarding Starliner certification, I guess I'll direct this to the administrator. Can you talk a little more about the importance of competition in terms of commercializing NASA's programs? And if it's a commercial program and there's only one provider, is that really achieving NASA's goals? Thanks.
Well, first of all, the flight readiness review last week, it was smooth as glass. And I think that it indicates the hard work, the rigor, the preparation that went in to making this flight successful. The only thing really I'm concerned about tomorrow is there has been consistently a thunderstorm at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the last week. So I think this flight is going to go very well. And then to specifically answer your question, competition is good, not only for the obvious reasons that it brings about the most efficient, productive, and cost-effective work product, but what it does, it gives you a backup. The proof's in the pudding. Years ago, when this competition for commercial crew started, what if we hadn't had 2 competitors? And what if it had only been Boeing? And so right there, that's enough demonstration for you of why we want competition. And then to take the implication of your question further, that's why we want competition in selecting the human landing system going forward on the moon. So that's what I expect that we're going to do. Now, you can't do all of this on something as complicated and sophisticated as this human landing system is unless you have the money. And I'm very optimistic at this point that the Congress is going to give us some additional funds that will allow us to go forward with that competition.
Thank you. Next up on the phones, we have Jeff Faust with Space News.
Good morning. A question for the administrator to follow up on his previous response. Earlier this week, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, sent you a letter offering basically to cut its price by $2 billion if it got a second HLS award. How would NASA evaluate that letter, assuming the GAO does not uphold the protests and force you to start over on the HLS competition?
I want you to ask me that question next week. We are prohibited by law in the procedures and policies of the GAO from commenting and getting in on this competition, this bid protest that is underway. The GAO is supposed to report by August the 4th, and then I can answer your question.
Joey Roulette, The Verge.
Thanks. Question for anybody on the panel. One of the key goals of the commercial program is, of course, to bring the cost down of human spaceflight and open up to people other than government astronauts. SpaceX has, sold booked a few flights already. Boeing might do so in the future after a few flights. Is this the kind of private activity that you guys expected? And from NASA's perspective, what kind of work needs to be done in the future to keep bringing that price down? And I have one more question after that.
And just for the folks who can't hear over the mic, the question was about the Commercial Crew Program and bringing the cost of human spaceflight down.
Yeah, I'd like to take that. Well, first off, our goal with the Commercial Crew Program is to commercialize low Earth orbit. We want to have a commercial economy in low Earth orbit so that we can go on and do the hard things of returning to the moon, exploring beyond our home planet, and going on to Mars. So, yes, we are absolutely meeting our goals with Boeing and SpaceX both having the ability to fly crews to ISS. To take that a step further, we want to commercialize ISS. ISS is currently the destination for these vehicles, but we want a commercial space station in orbit too, and that's going to be key, is how we commercialize low Earth orbit and expand beyond ISS, where we don't have to own and operate the entire thing. We can free up that funding for our exploration program and just buy what we need for the research in low Earth orbit. But it's establishing that low Earth orbit economy that's going to be crucial, and this is a great step in that direction. So we are absolutely meeting our goals. We need this dissimilar redundancy, and we want to see more people flying in space.
And I might add, I believe that the Congress will expand the ISS to 2030, and it would be our hope that by the end of the life of the ISS that we would have a commercial station, and that those commercial activities would be a lot more robust that Bob was talking about.
And next up, we have Rachel Joy with Florida Today.
Hi. I know we all want it to go well tomorrow, absolutely. But if, and I know it's a big if it does not go well tomorrow, what are next steps for NASA? Could that in any way affect Boeing's contracts with NASA? What would that response be?
Well, I would say we really don't want to answer a hypothetical question. We always have contingencies, but we work really hard to ensure our success tomorrow. And I think, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But obviously, we'll have plans in place to proceed on. We have a contract with Boeing. They have to meet our requirements. And we look forward to them demonstrating these requirements on this orbital test flight without crew to prepare for crew later on. And we still got some work to do before we get to that crewed flight also, but this is a huge step in that direction.
Kathy leaders that presided over the flight readiness review, it was so smooth. I think that there would have been something that would have popped up so we have enormous confidence going into tomorrow, save for the weather.
Next up on the phone, we have David Curley with the Discovery Channel.
Thank you. Administrator, if it's just a 4-year term, what are the 3 things you hope to accomplish in that term? And what about the pathway that NASA and the American Space Program is on? Does it need adjustment? Is there a turn that you hope to accomplish during your service?
Well, you're asking a kid who's walked into a candy store to pick 3 kinds of candies in an agency that is just so robust, so much of an exciting place. Pam told you for the 9th year in a row, it's been voted as the best place to work in the federal government. You should see the excitement. I went to the Goddard Space Center. I mean, they are so excited just in the field of science of what all's happening. They're so enthusiastic. This infectiousness is every place in NASA. It's like you're asking me to choose between our children, which is our best. Take aeronautics. We're getting ready to fly a supersonic airplane that will cause a lower sonic boom so that in the future you could have supersonic travel over populated areas. That was one of the problems with the Concorde. You could go supersonic over the ocean, but you couldn't over the land. And so there's just another example. And then, of course, exploration, research and development, the STEM programs. I think because of this excitement that we're seeing and these new accomplishments that we are going to start to develop another generation of mathematicians and technologists and engineers, not unlike what happened out of the Apollo generation that followed on for 2 generations in our educational system. We're going to be involved in that. And all along, doing all of this, we're going to be involved in making NASA reflect the diversity and strength of this country. So those are my more than 3 things.
Next up on the phone, we have Irene Klotz with Aviation Week.
Thanks, Jackie. My question, I think, is probably for Pam or for Bob. What is the status of the safety certification, or the system qualification that's underway on the 2 commercial suborbital providers that was announced probably almost a year and a half ago or so, that would pave the way for NASA personnel to fly on New Shepard and Spaceship Two. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Irene, I will take that as action, and we will get you an answer on what the current status is on that evaluation.
Next up, we have Amy with Space.com.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So this flight is definitely different than the last one. There's been a global pandemic and everything like that. So what have been some of the biggest challenges in getting this capsule ready for flight?
Let's see. I understand the question. What have been the challenges getting this capsule ready for flight? Was that the question?
Yes, sorry, dealing with like the pandemic and everything like that.
So, it's with any spacecraft, the challenge is just making sure that you're doing everything correctly, that all the systems are in the right configuration, that you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, that all the paperwork's right, that everything has been completed to get down to the point where we can safely launch. And I think, there's always issues that pop up during the processing that have to be resolved where things aren't exactly right. And ensuring that you have the detailed information that you need, that you're paying attention to all those details as you move forward in the progressing. We still got a couple things that we got to close out before we can launch tomorrow. Some of it's nominal, some of it, is something that popped up during processing. But we work through all that and get to the point where we know that when we launch, it's safe to launch. So getting a capsule ready or any spacecraft ready, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's a scientific mission, there is an awful lot that goes into ensuring that we're ready to go. And I think the way we work together as a team between our contractors and our civil servants, we are truly unified in what we do. And I couldn't be more pleased with the commercial crew team and how they work together with both Boeing and SpaceX in ensuring that when we launch, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here a little bit about the COVID, the pandemic. So here at Kennedy Space Center, we never shut down the center. We had to institute, precautions. You remember last year, we're back to wearing masks and so forth. So there were some challenges along those lines, just getting the right testing, the right cleaning. If there was a case on center, where we'd go in and do some additional cleaning, perhaps. So there were those sorts of challenges amongst both the Boeing and our civil servant teams, but we worked through all those, and I think we ended up in a really good place. As Bob mentioned, the teams worked really well together, and I got to give a shout out for the Chief Medical Officer and the medical teams here at Kennedy for doing the hard work of all that tracking and tracing and following through and providing us guidance to help us operate safely out here at the Kennedy Space Center.
And I'll pile on. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question totally. I mean, I could not be more pleased with what the NASA team has accomplished during this year of COVID. When you look back, on all the missions, we never missed a beat. And we had the procedures in place to look after the people that actually had to come on site and work. We found out how we could work and do telework to still accomplish the mission. And for these crewed missions, extra procedures in place to ensure that we were isolating only those folks that needed to have access to the crew were allowed access. They had to be vaccinated once the vaccines were available. We took extra measures over and above the health stabilization program to ensure the safety of the crew. But, that safety isn't just for the crews, it's the safety of the people actually working in close contact with one another, processing the vehicles also. So we made sure that everything was followed, the CDC guidelines, that we did things right, and all that extra cleaning Janet talked about.
And next up on the phone, we have Mika Maidenberg with Wall Street Journal.
Hi, Administrator Nelson. You talked about being, very confident about tomorrow. Could you talk a little bit about what you've seen from Boeing, sort of that supports that perspective?
With regard to Boeing, what?
You talked about being very confident in the launch tomorrow. I just was curious if you could talk a little bit about what you've seen on the Boeing side, that gives you that perspective, that feeling about the launch.
The flight readiness review, smooth as glass, no hitch. I mean, this is a no fooling event that occurs over a week before launch. Started all day, ended up after 5, going through every detail of the launch, led by the lady that heads up the mission directorate, Kathy Leaders. And that's what gives me the confidence. And we'll see tomorrow. But I think you're going to be very pleased.
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have with this group this morning, but stay tuned for a NASA social media event beginning on NASA TV at 11 a.m. And Senator Nelson, do you have any closing words to close us out?
The folks that are flanking me are illustrative of the kind of quality that we have. Thanks to Janet, this Space Center is just another marvelous example of NASA's can-do spirit. The three of us operate as a team, and it's a partnership. And I think, is going to work very well. I have the utmost confidence in these two. Their record speaks for itself, not only in the military, but in NASA as well. And in Pam's case, she was after NASA at the FAA and then at DARPA. And we get all of that expansion of her view. So this is indeed a great privilege for me to be back at NASA and to try to offer some little bit of continued public service. So thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you'll stick with us for the social media briefing at 11 a.m. And again, tomorrow, launch broadcast coverage starts at 2 p.m. Go Atlas and go Starliner.